difference. And it was really a cool
Mhm.
conversation. So
I find that when we talk about the difference between magic and dark magic, it's so polarizing, right? But it's so funny to me that as Americans, like we live in a I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a civilization based on violence. Like even in just our movies, not just our history, but like our movies and our entertainment are all about people getting their asses kicked.
mhm.
And people are so okay with John Wick shooting a gajillion different people, but someone lights a dark candle and says a few words, and then everybody loses their minds. And it's like, y'all gotta pick a lane. Like,
Right. Yeah.
what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
So, so for everybody watching, this amazing woman here is Dr. Kathy Gruver. Kathy and I, God, we met. How many years ago did we meet, Kathy?
Gosh, 7 or 8.
7 or 8, something like that. Yeah, at
Yeah.
HypnoThoughts. I remember I met you on a crazy weekend that was on an eclipse, and that was an insanely magical weekend in so many different ways. And
Yeah. And I went to your sigil class.
oh, that's right. Yeah, you popped in on there. That was a lot of fun showing that basic magic tech to a lot of hypnotists and kind of seeing the lights go off in their eyes
Yeah.
when they realize the amazing stuff. Let's see. We were going to talk quite a bit, if possible, about past life regression and what past lives actually mean. And I have my own story on my website that I'll probably mention later, but let's get you talking. How do you interact with past life regression or past life concepts?
Yeah. So I started playing with that in high school,
Oh,
much to the very, very huge dismay of my very Catholic mother.
oh boy.
So I was raised very Catholic.
Mhm.
My father didn't believe in it. He called us dumb Mickeys, and he would take every great pleasure on Sundays during Lent, sitting at
Mhm.
McDonald's. Of my mom and I were stuck with fish sandwiches, and he would have his quarter pounder going, like making fun of us that we couldn't have meat that day. So I had a very different grounding from him, but my mom was very strict with that, and I don't know. I just always found stuff like that fascinating. I don't know how I heard it originally. But I spent so much of my time in school. I'm still a voracious reader. Like I
Mm.
have so many books that I just would pour myself into. And I would go into the library and I would kind of go to the occult section, which at that
Mhm.
time in Pittsburgh was like this big, there's like 6 books. Um,
Quarter of a shelf. Yeah.
it's not even that big. And I must have read about past life and
Mhm.
reincarnation. And this was even probably before Many Lives, Many Masters was a thing. This would have
Oh,
been in
way
the
back.
70s, this would have been the late 70s, early 80s when I was figuring this out in like junior high. And then when I got
Mhm.
into high school, I connected with a girlfriend there and we decided we were going to be witches. So
Nice.
I put it back, Buckland's Complete Book of Witchcraft.
Oh, Big
Um,
Blue. Yeah.
I took it out of the library. I didn't want to check it out because this is how paranoid I was about religion. I thought like the library would call my mom and go, "Do you know what your daughter just checked out?" So I snuck it out in my book bag and then we
Mhm.
photocopied the entire thing. And then I snuck it back into the library. That's how like
Nice.
paranoid I was about my mom finding out about this thing. So I've been dabbling with past lives since high school. And in college, I was the one that was hypnotizing my classmates on Friday
Hmm.
nights to do reincarnation stuff. Everyone else was out partying and drinking and eating pizza, and I was doing
Yep.
hypnosis. So I was that person. It was just always fascinated me, and it made perfect sense. In the of the sort of three choices of what happens when we die, the first of which is nothing, you just go back to dirt. Then I'm
Mhm.
thinking, what's the point? That doesn't make any sense. And then
Yeah.
this concept of heaven and hell of, there's this space in the sky where you sit with everybody else. It's like, well, that kind of doesn't make any sense. Um,
Hmm.
whose heaven is it? Whose hell is it? Right? I mean, because we all have different views on morality and what is a sin and all the stuff.
Hmm.
And then when I started learning about reincarnation, I went, oh my God, that makes perfect sense. It's like school, right? You learn something, you go to summer, you come back and you continue your learning.
Hmm.
So that always just made more sense to me on a deep level. And when I was again starting to play with this in high school and college, I started to have almost sort of past life flashbacks where I would have dreams of things where I was like, boy, that felt really weird. And that seemed like me, but I didn't look like me. And what was that? So I've
Hmm.
been playing with this, and I say playing because that's how it started. I've been playing with this for a very long time. So that's sort of my background and how I discovered all this.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's so funny. There's the pattern that kind of shows up in practitioners' lives, and so much of it is while other kids were partying and getting drunk, I was doing weird stuff. I mean, I'm almost the exact same thing. I wasn't doing reincarnation studies, but I was doing hypnosis on Friday nights as well in high school. Um, I used to look at past life regression as just, a form of therapy. That was my
Mm,
approach because I spent a regrettable amount of time trying to pretend I was only scientific. Um, But I remember this one week changed my mind entirely because I work with two kids, little young
mm,
ones, like 10 and 11. And normally I don't work with kids that age
yeah.
in regression because it's all imagination. But in the middle of session on a Monday, this kid's voice drops and he goes, and he just says the word magnolia. And I'm like, that's weird. And you know the rule, you keep your poker face on. So I'm trying
Yeah.
not to freak the parent out. I'm like, it's just imagining things. I go throughout my week. Next kid on Friday. Similar thing. I think one was bedwetting, the other was temper tantrums at night. But this kid in the middle of it was a young girl, and her voice drops in the middle of the regression, and she says, Magnolia. And I was like, hmm, I'd have a much harder time keeping my face straight
Right. You're
there.
like, well,
And I was
interesting.
like, someone's communicating here. And keep a straight face, finish the session, everything's fine. I leave, and as I leave, the colleague I'm splitting the office with, her husband delivered a bunch of flowers. Guess what kind? Yeah.
Magnolias.
And as I'm driving home, there's some traffic blocking my normal exit. So I'm like, okay, screw it. I'll take this other exit, Magnolia Street. As I'm driving down, there is a car that had just gone through the safety rail and just parked there. So I pulled over. I remember most of my emergency medical interventions from the Air Force. And I ran over. This girl had gone over just a minute or two before. She's like 16, 17. And hard wreck. The glass had shattered and cut deep on the underarm. So that big artery there,
Mm.
I can't remember the name of. So I ended up, you know, I didn't have a tourniquet. So I just grabbed my belt, lashed it around as tight as I could, and called 911. And it made me think, I'm like, okay, this is clearly not just a therapeutic modality. Like somebody was talking here for some reason. I hope that girl's okay. If you're out there, I hope you're okay. But I didn't have like anything that was directly relevant to past lives. Rather, someone came through and kind of
Hmm.
shook my world a little bit. And that's when I started looking a bit more into this type of stuff here. So the obvious question, Kathy, is what happens when we die? No pressure.
I have a very specific theory on that.
Okay.
So, and I say it's, so it's my very strong belief. It's a knowing that I have, but I say theory
Mhm.
because, yeah, it's not really been proven. Um, I believe when we die, we kind of look over the scene and go, oh, crap, that's my body, whatever that may look like at that point. We have that moment of what is our first thought after death? What do we need to make amends for, reparations, forgiveness, that sort of thing. And we go to that in between place. And in that in between place, we have the ability to meet with those other people that we may have known in that lifetime or other lifetimes to say, dude, so sorry I killed you on the battlefield. That was just my
Mm.
orders. Yay, you did a great job. Whatever the situation is, you can have those very soul to soul conversations with someone. And then you rest from your lifetime and you sit down with sort of your spiritual guidance counselor, and they give you your report card. Hey, you did great
Mm.
with jealousy this time. You did really good with compassion, not so good with generosity, you know. And then they almost, and I make it look so like class, like school play kind of thing. They
Like
sit
a
down with
tax
you.
auditor just
Yeah,
going down the
seriously.
form.
Well, if you've ever seen the movie Defending Your Life, I think that's
Mm.
exactly what happens. Old movie, Meryl
Okay.
Streep, and I can picture him. I don't remember what his name is, but I seriously think that that's how it goes. You sit down with your guidance counselor and they say, hey, when you reincarnate into your next lifetime,
Mm.
what do you want to do? Here's your options. Here's the lessons you need to learn. How best do you think you want to tackle that?
Mm.
And I think we pick the things that we know is going to move us forward. And it's at this point, my ex husband, who was very critical of this sort of thing. And in a way, I welcomed that because if everybody just goes, oh, yeah, and you don't have to think about it, you don't ever think about it, right? You don't
Yeah.
actually question these things. And he would say, I can't believe that we picked this stuff. Why would somebody pick a really horrible lifetime? And I said,
Mm,
oh, let me tell you. I said, when I was a senior in high school, I knew I was going to be a theater major. I hated math. I wasn't a big fan of science. And so as soon as I could stop those things, I did. And so my
mm,
senior year, I knew I wasn't going to need it. My senior year of high school, I was taking philosophy, psychology, drama, debate, theology, like fun classes,
yeah.
English because we had to. And I remember stopping at my locker to go to my next class, and I grabbed a play. That was it, a play. And I'm walking down the hall, and my friend Kelly, shout out to Kelly McTaggart, man. She's like this high powered attorney in DC. She has like two doctorates. Like she's brilliant. She was one of our valedictorians, I believe. She's walking down the hall with this huge stack of books, F, Trig, and Calc, and and I was just like, ugh. And my thought was, oh my God, that looks horrible. Why would she do all these hard classes? She knew she needed that for her future.
Mm,
She knew that that next choice for her, which was going to be university to study whatever she studied that she got her PhD in, that she was going to need those things for her next journey. I didn't. I was a theater major. I had my play, and that was it. And I think it's the same thing with lifetimes. I think we have, before we land in this meat suit, we have this very conscious understanding of what do I need to move forward in this next lifetime. And sometimes it sucks, and sometimes it's shit, and sometimes it's hard. But we know that's what we need to evolve into this highly conscious being. And so
mm,
that's my theory. I think that's what happens. And then we reincarnate, we remember everything till about 5 or 6, and then we conveniently forget
yeah.
and we do it again. When I was a little kid, I desperately wanted to call my mom Rose. I wanted her nickname
Ooh.
to be Rose. I didn't know anybody named Rose. We didn't have roses. She didn't like roses, but I was determined to make her nickname Rose, and it never stuck. So I think
Mm,
probably in some past life, I knew her as Rose. Um,
mm,
it got to the point where when I travel all over the place, I've been to 31 countries, I just figured out, I would
oof.
land in certain countries and I would know the roads and I would feel comfortable there or very uncomfortable there in certain spots.
Mm.
There's people that I recognize, like, oh my God, I know you, you know. And I think that's what that is, that feeling of knowing or that feeling of repulsion. I think all that's past life residue.
There have been so many moments with myself and with clients where we've had exactly what you're talking about, like that, those residue memories that come up. And one of the things that has always kind of blown my mind is I firmly believe that when we dream, certain types of dreams, we're not in our body, we're out in the astral. And I do believe that
Yeah.
there are constructs in the astral that people unconsciously, sometimes deliberately make that can house that in between moment. And I have had so many moments, and people have told me where they will have dreams when they're children, especially, that will be moments in their life. But I've had also moments where it is so strong and it's such a powerful deja vu thing that you're not there. You are either somewhere where you have been in a different life, because I have actually I've only been to 3 countries, you big show off. Um,
I just figured it out, so I had to share.
yeah. And there have been, like, when I went to Japan, there were places in Japan where I didn't say anything. I was fresh off a concussion, full disclaimer, but where I knew I had some type of weird connection there on that deep soul level. But I also firmly believe that in that in between space that we go to through meditation or through dreams, we can see lives to come as
Mm.
well. And that's always kind of fascinated me. I know that there are spirits who have zero problem like giving you the horrible details about times to come unless you phrase things carefully. But what is your take on pre-life predictions instead of post-life regressions?
So that's a really interesting question. And if we go with this concept that is too big for my human brain to grasp, that there is no linear time, that
Hmm.
everything's happening at the same time. So in that way, it's like the old-fashioned radio in your car where you had to turn the dial to get from station to station. All of these things are playing simultaneously. So in that theory, I'm having all of my lifetimes right now as you and I sit here.
Hmm.
And in another radio dial, I'm in Egypt back in the whatever day that was, or I'm in the future of
Hmm.
whatever that is. That is I've had so many teachers sit down and start to say that concept, and I can feel my brain about to explode
Yeah.
because um, time has always been very confusing for me anyway. And once I started my journey of spiritual awakening, I'm not in time anymore. So if
Yeah.
somebody says to me, "How long ago were you in blah 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 blah?" I don't know. And there's been so many times where like I've gone in the bathroom to take a shower and I'll come out and I'll say to Eric, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry that took so long." And he's like, "It was 3 minutes." I'm like, oh, I thought I was in there all day, and so I have no concept of that anymore. So I often, when I try to think of like, when did that happen? I have to go back in time to, I have to become back in time to figure that out.
Hmm.
So if we go with the theory that there is no linear time, that's a human construct so that we know when to show up for a doctor's visit and when to record the podcast. If everything's truly happening like that simultaneously, which is too big for my brain to handle, then it's all happening at once. And if I can
Hmm.
turn the dial and get to previous lifetimes, why can't I turn the dial and get to next lifetimes? So it makes perfect sense to me. Um, I have had two experiences where I went to quote future lifetimes.
Hmm.
Um, Fascinating, very, very interesting. Seemed in a way harder to get to than the previous ones
Hmm.
for me.
I have had very similar things happen where I know that I am someone in a world that is yet to unfold.
Mm,
And when we do the whole linear time thing, which I mean, it has its advantages, sure, but I mean, then we have to talk about, probabilistic, blah, 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 and quantum this and that, way above my pay grade.
yeah.
But the thing that came into my head, interestingly, because my wife and I were talking about almost the exact same thing the other day. It's funny how, as people, we have these weird conversations, trying to figure out the simultaneity of time. And we were actually talking about like past life regressions and
Hmm.
why certain moments and certain patterns repeat. Like certain political movements tend to rise up again and again and again and cause problems. And we can make the argument that human behavior does that. But humans are also smart, theoretically, and we should put it into this stuff. And my belief is that, and what was shown to me in meditation later, that was the simultaneity of time it's not cleanly layered, but if we look at it as a wad of blankets or
Mm,
sheets, and these patterns, these moments are kind of like pins in the sheets that hold things together. Not all of them are great, but all of them are kind of necessary for the universe
right.
to grow through us. And I suspect that there are moments in our individual lives, our souls, that these patterns that repeat the lessons we have to learn over and over and over again. What do you think the lessons you have to learn are in this that would kind of affect others back and forth, if that's not too personal a question?
That's a great question. While I'm pondering that, I want to go back to something you said before, which is you
Hmm.
don't typically work with kids that age because it's just
Hmm.
imagination. I've had people come to my office and say, "Yeah, I'd love to try past life regression, but I don't really believe it. I think it's
Hmm.
bullshit." And I go, "I don't care if you believe it.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't care if you're making up a story that you're a princess in Russia back in the 1400s. If it
Hmm.
solves your problem, now taking that to a therapeutic thing, if that gives
Hmm.
you a better relationship with your dad, if that explains the interaction between your spouse and you. I don't care
Hmm.
what story you have to make up if it helps solve your problem. So, in that
Exactly.
way, for people who might be listening to
Hmm.
this to go, I don't even believe this crap, great, don't believe it. I don't care.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, our belief doesn't matter. Either something's true or not. So, just because
Hmm.
I believe this doesn't mean I'm right.
Yeah.
I feel like I am, and I believe that I am, and I have a knowing of this, but I could be wrong. I'll admit that. This is all theorizing stuff. Um, so, what are the lessons I have to learn? I think one of my big lessons in this lifetime and probably previous lifetimes, and I'm being really stubborn with this one, is the ability to rely on others
Hmm.
and accept help, ask for help, and not feel like I have to do everything myself. Because I was
Yeah.
just telling Eric, my husband, this morning a story of an ex who, when I was doing Wiccan circles,
Hmm.
he, as high priest, his job was to support me, high priestess, not to be
Hmm.
drunk off with everybody else having fun, but
Hmm.
to help me. Can I get some? Oh, I might as well just do it myself. And I kind of laughed and went, boy, that's been around for a while. So I think that's one of my big lessons is
Hmm.
allowing people to help me, to trust that someone will be there to help me.
Hmm.
So I think that's a big one that has resonated literally through my entire life. And I keep getting better, and then I have little slide backs because isn't that how humanness is? So I think
Yeah.
that was one of my big ones. I've been a teacher in multiple lifetimes, and so I think that has continued on of me teaching people. I'm doing a lot
Hmm.
of spiritual teaching now. I have a lot of people coming to me for awakening assistance. Um,
I'm seeing a big increase in that too.
thank
Yeah,
God.
definitely.
Thank
Finally,
God.
right?
We're getting
Well,
there. We're moving the needle at least a little bit. All of us old souls that are like, damn it, are we doing this again? Okay. You
yeah.
know, so I think that's one of my big lessons is allowing assistance and asking for help and not having
Hmm.
this feeling that I have to push through and do it myself. The other
Hmm.
thing is resting because I've had multiple lifetimes where as a healer, I've either gotten sick myself and died trying to help everybody else,
Hmm.
or I push too hard, push too hard, push too hard, and I become exhausted and can't help anymore. So I've been really good at turning down my type A personality to maybe A
Hmm.
minus. And I'm allowing time, and I have better work life balance and just better balance in general. And then I think the other one is I have spent so much of my life just knowing things that people will not listen to me, and then everything turns out exactly how I said. Sort of the
Oh,
Cassandra
yeah.
syndrome of I tried to
Hmm.
tell you this, and so I still have great frustration when I see things that other people don't, or I just have a knowing of, guys, this is a really bad, do you not see what this person's doing? It'll be fine. Okay. And then they do it and it all falls apart exactly the way that I was telling them it would. So I haven't figured out the exact lesson in that yet. Um, but damn, it's frustrating. And I had it happen recently where a huge thing is now unfolding and I'm sitting there going, try to
Yeah.
tell you, you
Like,
wouldn't listen to me, you know. So
welp.
it drives me crazy. So I think those are my three big things.
Definitely all things I can definitely resonate with, especially the Cassandra stuff. And I feel like so many people right now are, um, well, to jump back a second and talk about the spiritual awakening, I think so many of us are now experiencing that existential terror and dread because of the way the world is right now, that that's probably part of what's triggering everything, and which is not uncommon.
Yeah.
But that pattern of wanting to do it yourself is such an overwhelming presence, I think, in a lot of Gen X's life, because that's kind of how we grew up. And as I'm finishing my graduate studies for clinical medical counseling, medical health, mental health counseling, not medical, excuse me. I should probably learn how to say that. Um, I'm seeing such a strong correlation between these soul patterns that we have to overcome and personality disorders, which is interesting because if we go with the soul contract model, then people are agreeing to come in to deal with these particular issues throughout their life. And then they manifest the symptoms and end up in diagnostic language, which is kind of fascinating and definitely something I should probably be very careful about what I talk about so I don't get delicensed before I'm even licensed. But where do you believe the line between what you're here to learn as a soul embodied and your mental health
Mm.
lies?
Oh,
We should probably
that's a
clarify what is your doctorate in so that we don't accidentally misrepresent anything.
yeah. So I have a PhD in natural health with
There
an
we go.
emphasis in mind body medicine. So I'm not
Perfect.
a psychologist, though I started reading psychology books when I was about 7,
Hmm.
because I was that kid. So I would sit in my parents' basement. I'm an only child, so I had to amuse myself quite a bit. And I would sit in my parents' basement, and because I was such a voracious reader, I would look up on these sort of built-in shelves in the game room, the finished part of the basement. For those of you from the East Coast who understand what that is, California is like basement. I don't what's basement. And I
You mean
would
the
pull
death room in
random
an earthquake?
random right, but yeah, probably not a good idea. I would pull random books off the shelves and I became absolutely fascinated by a psychology book. There was a college level psychology book and a biology book. And the biology book, I would flip through all the words and I'd go to those. They had the like cellophane overlays of the human body,
Mm,
and I was
right, right, right.
fascinated by the anatomy. And it's so, of course, I ended up a massage therapist, so that obviously stuck. And I was a
Hmm.
psych minor in college, and I swore if I ever went back to school, it would be psychology. So for my
Hmm.
college graduation, I got a DSM-3R. Now we're up to
Oh,
5, so I got a DSM-3R,
oh, we're at
and
5 TR now.
are we are five? Oh my God, it's changing so fast. Which is good because some of it was really bad.
Mm.
But I read that cover to cover and I highlighted things, and I was always absolutely obsessed with learning about medicine and mental health. So I have so many hours of continuing ed that I don't need in various forms of psychological
Mm,
study because I just, the more I know, the more I get to help people, and
yeah.
I'm just obsessed with it. So um, this is a very good question because we have this concept of fate and predestined and soul contracts, right?
Hmm.
I think we'll get to the mental health aspect of that in a second, but I think we're set on a trajectory of here's the four lessons you're supposed to learn. And if you choose this path, you will still learn there's lessons, but your life will look different. I think back to some of these pivotal moments in my life, and I so desperately wanted to go to Carnegie Mellon. Theater
Hmm.
person, that was like, I grew up in Pittsburgh, so I was like freaked at Carnegie Mellon. I did their pre-college program, and I was absolutely obsessed with going to Carnegie Mellon, and then I was going to move to LA and I was going to have an acting career.
Hmm.
I'm still on the waiting list at Carnegie Mellon. I should hear any day. I didn't get
It's
in.
coming through. I can feel it.
It's coming any day now. Same thing with NYU. I'm still on the waiting list there. Had I gotten into NYU, I probably would have headed more Broadway. Had
Hmm.
I gotten into Carnegie Mellon, who knows what would have happened? But I ended up at Point Park, which was a
Hmm.
smaller liberal arts school. Now it's Point Park University. It was Point Park College when I was there. And during my time at Point Park, I was not particularly happy with how things were being cast. It was the same old crap from when I was in high school, where the favorites got all the good roles and I got shit. But what I learned from Point Park was how to do massage. And then when I moved to California, I continued doing massage, and my massage career stuck. The award-winning film roles never came, and that massage led me to more healing, to alternative medicine, to my master's and PhD, to 8 books, to 350 talks worldwide, to TED Talks, to all this stuff. So
Hmm.
I look at that and I go, wow, clearly that was a very strong path that I was, quote, supposed to be on. But
Hmm.
had I gone to Indiana University where I got in, had I gone to some other school, who knows what the path would have been? Would I be a healer still? Would I be what? We don't know when we make those big decisions, right? So I think
Hmm.
there's a contract, but I think there's multiple ways to let that contract unfold, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So the mental health stuff, and excuse me, and I've been thinking about this more and more because I had a Kundalini awakening recently, and
Ooh.
I'm on a Facebook group, um, where I should know better than to be on Facebook groups because you read some of the stuff and you're like, oh, but there's a lot of people talking about, I had a Kundalini awakening, but I was diagnosed as bipolar. I don't think I'm bipolar. I think I had an awakening. So I'm
Mm,
reading person after person talking about entities and these really what read to me as severe mental health things. And they're
mhm,
going, I'm going to stop my meds because I think it was an awakening. And I go,
mm.
oh, no, 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 no,
Don't,
no,
don't,
no.
don't, don't, don't.
So I don't know where that falls anymore. My Kundalini awakening was lovely. I had
Mm.
no nightmares. I had no
Oh, you
horrible
had one
things
of the
happen to me.
nice ones, man.
I had one of the nice ones. And it came from an ayahuasca journey, which was a beautiful experience.
Okay.
So, but I'm reading more and more about people wanting to explain away what seems to be pretty severe mental health stuff and saying it's an
Mm,
awakening. And I don't know yet where I land with that. I've not done enough research on it. I actually went to PubMed because I'm such a study nerd and actually looked that up. And there was a scientist or psychiatrist in India that was looking at the rate of awakenings and mental health crisis. And it was
mm-hmm.
fascinating, but it was a preliminary study on what is the connection between these things. And I have to wonder how many people sitting in mental institutions just truly are communicating with God and they had some sort
Mm-hmm.
of great spiritual awakening, and how many truly need to be there and be on medication. I don't know the answer to that. And I'm not in any way, of course, saying stop your medication. I'm not
Yeah.
saying which
Please
it is.
don't.
I
Yeah.
don't know I don't know the answer to that. So, how does that fit into reincarnation? Is that your lesson to learn? Is that the lesson for the people around you? I
Mm,
mean, my father-in-law just passed away, and he
mm,
was pretty severely bipolar. And I look at that and I go, was that your lesson? Was that our lesson? Was that, I don't know. This is sort of the paradox of all this, right? And I think
mm,
about that frequently when someone is affirming things or doing manifestation work and all these roadblocks are thrown up. Does that mean that you're on the wrong path? Or does that mean you have to learn to overcome the roadblocks? That's the paradox of this.
yeah.
Um, I used to be so upset when I didn't get the play role that I wanted, the film role that I wanted. And I realized, well, that wasn't mine. That was for somebody else. And when you want something, it's really hard to recognize the non-duality of things, right? Because we think it's
Mm,
my turn, it's my thing. Well, no, we're a collective. There
yeah.
is no separation. And talking about the awakening and sort of the shifting on this planet and these cycles, the more we awaken and we see there is no duality, there is no separation, then we can let that compassion come in and everything's going to turn out
Mhm.
differently. It's going to be a very interesting shift when this goes a little bit further, I believe.
Absolutely. And to reiterate, just for safety's sake, what you said, please, out there, if you're watching this, if you're on meds, keep taking them. Listen to your doctor, please. Thank you.
Please
But
and thank you.
yeah, 100%. It's funny what you went right to where I was going to try and lead it to. The number of people who thank the gods we no longer just throw anyone who's different in an asylum anymore. But the my Kundalini awakening, I like to call it an arousal because I don't like to say enlightened, but whatever, was definitely different because that came from that concussion that I mentioned a while back. And
Oh, fun way to do it.
oof, yeah, that started it when I had the concussion when I was in the middle of a high energy practice and I kept going with the practice. So rewired some crazy stuff. But
Yeah, that.
yeah, full on crazy energy exchanges. Ghosts started showing. I thought I was losing my mind until the girl I was living with at the time just out of nowhere said, "Hey, do you keep seeing XYZ?" And I'm like, "Oh, thank God. Okay, not just me." But the number of people who come to me or have come to me as a hypnotherapist who think that they're crazy, but they have, an attachment or they have a spiritual issue that they're working with is kind of impressive. And I suspect
Mhm.
people come to hypnotists because of that, because it's almost mental health, but we can't have people held just in case.
Yeah. It's also
Yeah.
woo enough, right? On the woo
Mm,
meter. Um, However, it depends on how you present yourself, of course, but
yeah.
hypnotherapy can kind of start to click the woo meter a little bit.
Hmm.
And I think the perception of hypnotherapists is we're fringe enough that we're going to be accepting to have these conversations. You
Hmm.
go to your psychiatrist or your psychologist and you say, I'm seeing things, they're going to put you away. I mean, some of the stuff that I've experienced, Mother Mary is with me always. She just sort of sits there with me and she helps me with my
Hmm.
healing and I can channel her. And, you say
Yeah.
things like that and people go, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
What I found after my Kundalini awakening, and this sounds nuts for everybody listening, I acknowledge this sounds crazy. I hear trees. I hear trees now. They
Hmm.
giggle, they sing, they hum. The trees in Japan, I just got back from Japan, sound different than the trees in Santa Barbara. To
Hmm.
which my friend Terry went, "Of course they do." And I went, "Well, yeah.
They're
I mean,
Japanese trees. Yeah.
there wasn't like there was an accent. They more sort of toned, whereas the trees around my yard almost sort of giggle, and the trees down the street were kind of singing. And that sounds
Hmm.
insane. I cannot go to my primary care physician and be like, "Yeah, my cholesterol's fine. I've been exercising." Oh, and trees talk to me. He'd be like, "Oh shit," and he'd be, I'd be on a different floor of the hospital. Um, but why couldn't they? They're probably making
Hmm.
noise that we just can't hear anyway. Dogs hear sounds that we don't hear. So
Yeah.
why can I not be tuned in to trees? I don't know. I know it sounds weird. I told my husband I was hearing trees and he's like, "Do I need to be worried about this?" And I went, "Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, I don't
That
know."
was that's not as weird as it sounds. I mean, personal experience, I don't hear humming or singing, but I have definitely been through the forest, nerdy disclosure, on a Bigfoot hunt once.
It's
But I kept hearing this, probably like a sibilant whisper is probably the best way to say it, but it almost felt like it was a walkie-talkie, like it was a frequency I
mm,
could almost hear. I was wondering what in the heck I was hearing, and it kept getting louder when I would, louder when I would lean
mhm.
towards the larger trees. And I was like, oh, okay, that's new. But a lot of interesting studies have shown, especially with mycelium mats, because they're easier for us to look at. There is like electrochemical communication that goes on
Sure. Well, and
between.
everything's just energy and
Yeah.
everything's putting off energy. So why can, if dogs can hear a certain tone and
Mhm.
as we get older, we lose certain levels of tone, why
Mhm.
can't there be a sub? auditory level for some people that other people can hear. I mean, it kind of makes sense to me. And
Oh, absolutely.
I was going
Yeah.
to throw this in. This is sort of an aside, but I love watching educational stuff on YouTube. Hell,
Hmm.
surprise. Of course I do. And we were watching a video on YouTube. It was a couple weeks ago. It was like the 10 scientific discoveries you haven't heard of. And I was like, oh, nerd alert. Okay, let's
Okay.
do it.
Yeah.
So we're watching it. And like the third one, you're going to kick out of this if you didn't already hear this. Science discovered that we emit energy. And with certain tools, you can see energy around the body. And I paused it and I went, of course, it's an aura. We've been
Yeah.
talking about this for, and I got so pissed. And he's like, why are you so upset about this? And I said, because we witches and
Hmm.
psychics and sensitive people, and we've been talking about this for decades. And now science
Hmm.
goes, you know what we found? Uh, you know,
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, it's hilarious to see that we now have a machine that can, verify so it's true. It's like, mother, what?
like we know
Um,
we've been trying to tell you this. And we're the crazy ones, right?
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that in as a side that at some point science is going to catch up to all this.
Mhm.
I would like to do a study. So since my ayahuasca journey, my hands burn pretty much all the time. I'm a Reiki master. I've
Mhm.
been doing Reiki since the 90s.
Right.
So it's not unusual that when I get around someone that needs healing, my hands will get really hot.
Mhm.
But since my ayahuasca journey, my hands have been burning like all the time. And
Mhm.
as I talk about, like they're starting now because I'm talking about it. I would like to do some sort of skin temperature thing to see
Mhm.
if when I'm not doing Reiki and then when I start to do Reiki, how the temperature on my hands change. I would like to do that kind of study because I put them on people and they go, oh my God, thanks for heating up the lotion. And I'm like, just my hands. I didn't
Mhm.
have some special heater for my lotion, but thank you. So yeah, so I think science is, it's catching up to all this. And
Mhm.
I would love to see more studies done on reincarnation. We have so many more anecdotal stories now, especially from children. And, the famous one was,
Mhm.
what is that kid's name? James, who was the World War II pilot and
Mhm.
got shot down and identified his sister. And I mean, like, it was a crazy story. And I watched a special on YouTube where they looked at a couple kids that remember being in 9/11, and one
Yep.
remembered being in the bombing. Two brothers bombed, and there was a daycare in the was it Chicago that he bombed one of the big buildings, but there was a
The
daycare in the
Oklahoma City bombing.
yeah, maybe it was the Oklahoma City bombing.
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm not up on my history as much as I would like. But there was kids that remembered that, so
Mhm.
it's like, why would they have these stories, or kids turn to their mom at 4
Mhm.
and go, I remember you from before, but you were my sister. And it's like, whoa, where are they
Yeah.
getting this stuff? So we're seeing more and more of that. And of course, most religions throughout history at some stage or another had a reincarnation or a life
Mhm.
after death, that type of belief system. So it's not new. This is not new.
No, not at all. And the thing that interests me, I like to kind of look at Christian history not being a Christian or even Christian tangent anymore, which is funny because I get along fine with Christ. But
It's his people
um,
that,
yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
it's like,
yeah, exactly. Um, but I mean, we could talk about the Christian egregore some other time, but that's this whole other kettle of fish. But the interesting thing is phrases that survived the purge into the King James Bible, things like "No one may enter my kingdom unless they are born again." I
mm,
think are such a really good example of those little puns that get attributed. I mean, obviously, the story of Christ goes much farther back than 2,000 years with other folks, but it's that story of, hey, you don't get it right the first time.
yeah,
Just keep going. We got infinity to play with, so play
right.
with infinity.
Well, and
Um,
also, but what a beautiful way to control people, when
mhm,
the missionaries and the Christians took over very forcibly, as we know throughout history,
mhm,
they looked at the pagans and went, oh, wait, you guys don't believe in one God and you believe that you get to try this over and over again. Well, we can't control you without a threat. So, hey, you
mhm,
get one shot at it. And if you don't follow our rules, you go to hell. They better listen. And enough time and enough threats and enough repetition of
mhm.
hypnosis sort of took them over and they went, oh, I guess this is the new thing, which forced all the witches underground. And
Yep.
we were back in the broom closet.
Yeah. Well, no one wants to be set on fire. Um, but
No.
yeah, that reminds me of a funny story. I want to say it was a.
Being set on fire reminds you of a funny
Oh,
story.
no, no, I'm sorry. What you had said about the takeover of the indigenous,
Yeah.
which is not, that's not the funny part. But I want to say it was a Comanche warrior named Red Elk, someone to that effect. Unfortunately, I can't remember the exact details, but it was a conversation between someone trying to convert him to Christianity. And he was such a blunt person as you would expect from a war leader. And he just basically said, "So let me understand. When I die, I will go to hell where you and your friends will not be." And preacher's like, "Yes." And he goes, "I'll take hell."
Sign me
That
up.
sounds great.
They have better
Uh,
wine there, from what I understand.
yeah, right. It is kind of fascinating to see, despite the attempts to shut down thoughts on like reincarnation and all the psychic phenomenon that we are now learning, the government is tangibly kind of admitting suppressing science that has shown it, which is hilarious because we've done it for, I don't know, thousands and thousands of years at this point.
Right.
That that I think you touched on it earlier, the non-dual state might be, I think, the secret to beginning to uncover these things,
Yeah.
peeling back these personalities that I don't even want to say we chose, because the majority of us are formal personalities or something that was forced upon us, at least in its basic structures. And I think peeling that back really begins to show this. And having gone through, high energy transformations, I realize we only have a minute or two left here. Maybe we can leave it on this note. Is that fundamental step we have to take to begin to see, past that veil and realize death really ain't that scary when we get right down to it.
It's
I
just a
mean,
transition.
yeah.
It's so there was I would have to look up and see who this was. A friend of mine sent me this quick video that this guy on Instagram made. And he was talking, it was two babies in the womb talking
Hmm.
about whether they thought there was a mother. And it basically went on to, do we think there's a God?
Hmm.
And it was just such a fascinating, I mean, just what a great way to represent this. And, the one baby said,
Hmm.
sometimes if I'm quiet, I can hear her.
Hmm.
And the other one was like, "What are you, an idiot? There's no mother. We're going to get out of here, and that's it. There's no, this is we're done sort of situation." But it was just such this beautiful parallel to this
Hmm.
idea of death. And I've helped with births. I was a massage doula. I think I helped with 12 or 13 births, which
Oh,
was
wow.
some of the most incredible experiences I've ever had. I
Hmm.
never wanted kids. I don't have kids, but to see that and be part of that experience was such a blessing. And I've also helped clients pass on,
Yeah.
and there's not much difference. It's
Yeah.
unknown, it's scary, you don't know what's coming. There's this momentary struggle, and then there's just this releasing, and it
Hmm.
almost looked the same. Like it almost had the same energy, but two different ends of that spectrum. It was both of those were fascinating experiences.
Yeah, definitely. And I've only been there for one person when he died. It was a car accident that I come across, not the one that I mentioned earlier. It was a different
Hmm.
one. And yeah, there is that moment when you feel it, whatever it is, that spark that's in somebody exit the,
Yeah,
the mortal coil, so to speak.
it's
Kathy,
different.
where can people find you? Because I know that you have a hard stop coming up here and I don't want to keep you past your time.
Yeah, you're amazing. I can be reached at kathygruver.coach. I'm
Hmm.
a life coach, executive coach, psychedelic coach. I do a lot of work with internal family systems and work with cognitive behavioral therapy. I've got so many tools because I'm a lifetime learner. And then as a speaker, it's kathygruver.com. And you can find my TEDx talks there and my books and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. And I'm all over social media. So, I
Oh,
just launched some new
absolutely.
YouTube stuff. It's just youtube.com/Dr Kathy Gruver.
Okay. I'll make sure that those links are available for everybody who sees
Yeah.
this. All right, Kathy, thanks for coming on. And it's good to catch up. It's been a minute or
Yeah.
two, so we're
I
gonna have to
know.
be very careful not to be strangers in the future. I hope I'll be able to see you in July if I can get around to it. But if I don't, it's been great seeing you now.
Good to see you too, my dear. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. It's always great to catch up with the people who really just kind of have been with you for a long time in powerful ways. Dr. Gruver is an amazing woman. She is a coach, a hypnotherapist, a Reiki healer, a speaker on the global scale, I believe now a multiple TEDx speaker, a massage therapist, and a trapeze artist, believe it or not. She is amazing, and I strongly recommend that you work with her. You can find all her contact information down below. And of course, if you want to talk to me or work with me, you can find all my contact information down below as well. I truly hope that you enjoyed this conversation between Kathy and I, and that it left some seeds for you to pursue in terms of what does happen when that moment comes for us, and then how we can come back the next time and do things a little further. I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye, and you have yourself a great weekend, and I'll catch you in the next interview. Bye for now.